President Trump has really left no exit ramps here, except Trump himself unilaterally withdrawing his steel and aluminum tariffs and unilaterally withdrawing his retaliatory tariffs against China until the WTO approves them, which could take several years. If Trump doesn't do that, we're in a downward spiral. Because both his steel and aluminum tariffs were done in a way that was inconsistent with WTO rules, and because he's doing this retaliation inconsistently with WTO rules, the other countries involved really can't negotiate. Their only option is to retaliate.
When you said there are no off-ramps, typically in a trade negotiation, what are some of the off-ramps that might be put in place to avoid such a situation, and how is this different?
Well, the typical off-ramps would involve the countries getting together behind closed doors and coming up with creative solutions. And it would involve the country that wants the duties to be dropped by the United States making some concessions to the United States, related or sometimes not related to the original duties. But these countries really can't negotiate. They can't simply come in and give us concessions, because what we're threatening to do, or what we have done with the steel and aluminum tariffs and with the retaliatory tariffs on China, are not consistent with WTO rules. So when we threaten to do WTO illegal actions, or when we take WTO illegal actions, that's something other countries won't negotiate with. They'll put their foot down and just retaliate.
Gregory, let me turn to you and get your reaction to what Matthew just said. Number one, are there off-ramps that you see? And secondly, is a trade war ever really winnable?
Well, I think that's a big myth in terms of the stance of the administration right now, is that you can actually win these types of negotiations. As was recently pointed out, the way these negotiations generally unfold is over communication. And what we haven't seen really is communication, especially over the last couple of weeks. And that has really led to an intensification of tensions between China and the U.S., as well as between other trading partners, Canada, Europe. And I think the big risk is that we escalate these tensions, and that as the U.S. imposes these additional tariffs on $50 billion of imports from China, China will retaliate. It said it will retaliate with equal scale and equal intensity, and that risk further escalating trade tensions and weighing on growth around the world.
When you think about the impact of the U.S. economy, so many market participants and economists for that matter, Gregory, just take the exact dollar amount in tariffs and impute that onto the economy. I mean, aren't there wider effects? So what is your basic assessment on how this could impact the economy, particularly when China could do things like, we could do the same for that matter, slow down supply chains, things that are sort of soft countermeasures, not necessarily tariffs?
That's right. It's possible to model these tariffs, and we come up with estimates of about 0.1% off of GDP in both the U.S. and China if there were to be $50 billion of tariff imposed on both sides. That being said, those are probably underestimating the true risk to the economy, because if we think about supply chain disruptions, if we think about stock market effects, if we think about business uncertainty, reduced private sector confidence, all of these are already having an effect on the economy and are already weighing on economic momentum. So we have to think a little bit more broadly in terms of just the simple macroeconomic shocks. And that's where the real risks are, is that we start to see businesses putting some plans onto the sidelines, deciding not to invest, and that will weigh on the economy at a time when global growth is already slowing. And that's a big point to make, is that U.S. activity is probably peaking in the second quarter, and we're in an environment of slowing economic momentum in which these tariffs are going to have an outright larger impact on the economy.
Matt, I know it's very hard to predict what anyone will do, let alone our president, but is it at all possible that his point was made and at some point he calls it off, he backs back down? I mean, what move do we make next if you're President Trump and the administration?
Well, Trump has threatened to commit another series of retaliations to respond to the other countries' retaliations to us, and I fear that he might well do that. I don't think that he's going to back down. I think he's going to dig this dangerous hole deeper. But the only other possible solution is that other countries get in a room and they offer him some face-saving concessions that are not real in substance but provide him face-saving, so that he can try to sell that to his base as if he got a victory when he didn't. I don't think that's going to fly here. I don't think it'll happen, but that's the only thing that could happen other than this hole getting deeper.
Gregory, how about you? You know, the president, by reputation, is an able negotiator. He certainly, in this case, seems to be playing hardball. What are the odds that he gets at least partly a win and what he wants? maybe tactically this is the way, even though it's different from the way it's been done in the past, maybe this is the way to get results and get the attention of the alleged offenders in trade.
Well, I think that's perhaps the paradox in U.S. trade policy right now, is that Trump did have negotiators at the negotiating table, but then he threatened and actually imposed tariffs. And I think he went a step too far. And other countries are now saying, we're not going to negotiate under these circumstances outside of the premises of the WTO. We're not going to negotiate with a knife to our throat. And I think it's very hard to see really how this situation could evolve. It could evolve in many different ways. We could see an escalation of the tensions, especially vis-a-vis Europe, because Europe has to negotiate trade policy as a whole, and it cannot do it just with Germany or just with France. And as a result, you might see further escalation of the trade tensions coming in the next few weeks.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.